I'll trigger it.
If you guys don't ask it first. Because
I wasn't sure if you were going to come or not. But thanks.
Well, I can call it as
Ask
well.
Bill. Yeah.
Maybe the
No, so you leaving your phone?
Somebody count me in.
indoors.
Bill Schofield.
Okay. We're going to call to order the August 6th meeting of the Parks, Recreation, and Intergenerational Services Commission. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and that's going to be led by Mr. Bill Schofield.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. That was Commissioner Hargrove's idea. On to the roll call.
Chair Price,
I'm here.
Vice Chair Sandoval,
Here.
Commissioner Ahmad, Commissioner Eckler,
Here.
Commissioner Hargrove,
Present.
Commissioner Jans, Commissioner Reed, Alternate Member Horowitz. We have a quorum.
Thank you. So anyone wishing to speak to the commission at this point should fill out a card or a the half sheet of paper and hand it to the clerk. And we're going to move on to item 1A, which is presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda within this jurisdiction of the commission. Note that the commission is prohibited by law from discussing issues not on the agenda brought to them at this time. Do we have any 1A cards? Nope. So item 1B, Commissioner Communications. Is there anything to discuss for that?
Just real quick, I'd like to let folks know that the city of West Sacramento has a low-power radio station that reaches everyone in the city of West Sacramento. It's called KYWS. That's Know Your West Sacramento. The folks who are running KYWS are trying to get it up and running again, trying to get folks to listen to it. I've been working with them on something called Community Conversations, which is a real, it's exactly what it sounds like. So far, we used the Community Conversations program to put information out there about the parks proposition funds that we're trying to get, the grants from the state. So if you want to listen to that, it's on 92.9. I'm assuming that most of the West Sacramento Trail Riders Association still have radios in their homes. For the rest of us, though, you'll have to sit in your driveway and listen to it in your car, because that's probably the only place that you have a radio. So it's KYWS, it's 92.9. We just recorded another community conversation. I put that out there because as part of the Parks and Recs Commission, we're hoping that you'll think of some things that would be interesting community conversations. There's so many neat things going on in West Sacramento that we can talk about. Maybe at some point we have the Trail Riders Association on as a community conversation and talk about what we're doing with horses and trails in the city. So I just want to put that out there. KYWS 92.9. Jim Brewer is the person from the city who's running that. He's an amazing person and a really nice guy, and I'm really thankful that he's allowed me to be part of it. And we want Danny to come do saxophone solos at 2 in the morning.
Sure, anytime.
2 in the morning.
I have a quick question, though. Are you guys recording those? Is there a podcast available?
Yes, they are recorded. They're not streaming online yet, but they are on the KYWS website.
Fantastic.
And so the Prop 68 one, you can easily find on the KYWS website.
Thank you.
The next one we did is about the census.
All righty. On to presentations. Item 2, update on the Prop 68 grant application. Aaron Rivas.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Erin Rivas, and I'm here to present you with an update on the statewide park development and community revitalization program grant applications. Staff submitted 3 applications last Friday, requesting over $20 million in grant funding for park improvements. The community engagement efforts for these applications were well attended, with nearly 400 people, including children, participating. There was a wide representation of the community at each event: families with young children, seniors, minorities, people with physical limitations. Staff feels like while each of the proposed park projects are very different, each project should be extremely competitive in this grant program. So our first site is the West Decker Park. The recreational features that we have proposed include a 10,000 square foot skate park. The current one is 7,000 square feet. A 10,000 square foot pump track, which I guess is like a BMX course, right? Splash pad, playground, a restroom, basketball court, multi-use court. We got a big demand for pickleball, which is relatively new to me, but we had some pickleball people there. We have a sports field striped for youth and adults, soccer and baseball, walking, running trail along the park perimeter, shaded seating and picnic areas, public art, lighting, shade structures, native plantings, and trees. The cost of the park improvements will be $7,186,179. The next site is 1504 Fallbrook, and the proposed improvements will use former school playfields that are currently unused and minimally maintained and allow for the creation of a new neighborhood park. The improvements to 1504 Fallbrook include recreational features such as bike racks, trash recycling receptacles, walking and running loops along the park perimeter, shaded seating, picnic areas, a basketball court, a restroom, which we found out was a big ticket item, a large flexible open lawn space for a variety of sporting activities, benches, lighting, native plantings, a picnic area, native habitat gardens with the tree grove and disc golf, additional trees being planted, and then we wanted to have 2 access points, one up by Grande Vista and another one back by the parking lot. And the park will be available for public use when school is not in session, so weekends, after school, during the summer, on holidays. The total cost for these park improvements are $5,374,282. And the final project was the Bridge District Plaza. So the proposed improvements to the Bridge District Plaza, park design features 4 elements, which is Zocalo, which I'm going to botch all of this, La Puerta, La Onda, and El Camino and El Paseo. The Zocalo means a public square or meeting space in Spanish. The open and flexible plaza serves as the community's gathering space, which can be programmed for big and small events. The space is lined by large shaded trees and defined by using a variety of permeable pavers using different colors and textures. La Puerta means door or gateway in Spanish. The iconic structure will create a unique presence in the park, providing a sense of arrival and framing scenic vistas. La Onda, or the wave, is an interactive water feature, which is actually very exciting. If you ever look at Jameson Square in Portland, they have something like that there, and they have video. It's really cool. The La Onda is an interactive water feature and amphitheater that emulates the ebb and flow of the Sacramento River. La Onda is created by large stacked stones. Water cascades from the stones and fills a gentle sloping area that will become about 12 inches deep with water and then drain. And once drained, the cycle repeats again. When La Onda is turned off, the space can function as an amphitheater, with the stones functioning as a seating or possibly even as the stage itself. El Camino and El Paseo, they connect Riverfront Street and the Riverwalk Trail to Zocalo. They are tree-lined, flexible promenades that can support pop-up and flexible programming such as food trucks, game nights, and farmers markets. Each has a unique character. El Camino conjures visions of a quaint alley, while El Paseo creates an intimate setting that transitions the plaza from urban to natural. The park includes other recreational features such as site lighting, a restroom facility, which will actually be dual purpose because we can actually, there's some equipment that needs to support the water feature, which we can store in the restroom building, and also allow for some storage for special events. The shade trees, rotating art exhibits, climate adaptive, drought tolerant landscaping, and informal turf area. The total cost for these improvements will be $8.5 million. And that concludes my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Any questions, Matt?
The drawing says it's the concept level site plan, so are we still at the concept level, or are these solidifying as the actual proposals for the final plan, if the question makes sense? Are these what we're saying we want to build, or are these still things we're aspiring to be able to do at some, does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Well, they're still conceptual, but the elements that we have highlighted in these plans are elements that we've asked for specific grant funding for. So the public plaza is a little bit different because the plaza itself is the recreation feature compared to the other sites where we're calling out, specific recreation amenities, major amenities like a renovated, expanded skate park, and support amenities like a restroom. We receive grant funding for those elements. Those elements should be in the final plan, but the concept plans still need refinement. So we would still, if grant funding was received, we would still need to do some follow-up community engagement to really fine-tune the plans.
So, but we're at the point where we're getting iterative, and say for the West Acre Park, they're kind of being set now. The pickleball court is what will be there if it works out with the grant funding, and when you put a shovel in the ground, you don't find something there that you can't put a pickleball court on top of it. But that's the thing, that's kind of the thing in the plan that it's solidifying as that's right?
Sports courts,
Okay.
yes.
I just want to make sure, because as these plans go out, once you start putting specific names onto things, then If they change for some reason, then folks start saying, well, you promised us a pickleball court, and we have no pickleball court, and that is disappointing at times. I also I want to, more information on the restroom facility at Westmore Oaks Classic. My understanding, and this is truly just a question, my understanding was the city generally didn't like to put restrooms at neighborhood parks that didn't have sports facilities. So as somebody who lives in the neighborhood, and I heard both things, heard folks say they want restrooms there, I heard folks say they don't want restrooms there. What was the thinking behind locating a restroom in a low-level neighborhood park?
We talked to the school district, and the school district believed that if there's going to be sports activities like a basketball court, that if somebody's got to go, they're going to go, and they're not going to go home. So they were completely supportive of having a restroom there. And we had a lot of people, seniors from the community, said they'd love to walk and use the walking paths and the loops, but that having a restroom facility was something they really needed. It was really hard for them to hold it,
So, well, I'm there myself. So that's good. I appreciate that, because I can argue a restroom at a park like this either way. It's very easy to do that. I know one of the things we hear a lot, especially now, is will these attract undesirable people? Will they attract homeless? Bathrooms generally do attract homeless. We know that. So does that mean, as part of this, having a restroom there, will we be looking at one of Sam's self-cleaning restrooms, or will this be something that will be have to be actively managed by Parks and Rec?
I think for the West Acre property, which we are proposing a restroom at the West Acre, the expanded West Acre, and also for clarification, the Public Plaza project is an acquisition and construction, so we are using grant funding to acquire the land and to make improvements. West Acre is an expansion. A restroom is there, and that would be a site that we'd want to look at the automated intelligent restroom because it's so heavily used and would be accessible to the public more hours than the Fallbrook site. The Fallbrook site, typically, you're right, Commissioner Hargrove, that we would not place a restroom in a neighborhood park. But given this site, the support by the school district and by the neighborhood, and our requirement by the grant program to incorporate the community engagement feedback into the design of the park, we opted to include a restroom. This restroom will have more limited hours that it's accessible to the public, and so we always have the flexibility of if we're fortunate enough to receive funding and construct the improvements, to modify how the park is operating, but I wouldn't anticipate as many issues, if any, at this location.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. My last question is there any concern with putting a water feature in one of the parks because of the drought restrictions and new state laws that we're under?
We're going to use recycled water. Are recirculating water?
So is this an interactive water feature, and sorry, but is this an interactive water feature where kids will be playing in it, type water feature?
So for the West Acre site, we did not have, there's a little splash pad at West Acre.
Oh, cool.
So at West Acre, we did not include the additional funding needed to have the recirculated water. And there are pros and cons with that feature. So when you have a recirculated water, you can move more water, and you can move it all year long if you wanted to, even if we're faced with drought conditions. The challenge is that you basically treat it like pool water. It has to be very clean, and it's very expensive to maintain. So for West Acre Park, that splash pad, if we were in a drought situation, we would not be operating that splash pad, or it would be very restricted hours of operation. For the Public Plaza component, because that's on the waterfront, it's a very significant feature, and because there was room in that budget, we did provide funding to consider a recirculated feature. thus the mechanical equipment and as part of the restroom facility. We have the option to not do that and back out some grant funding based on the cost if needed. But we have time to make that decision.
So last question is, this water feature, it sounds like you said it fills up and raises to about 12 inches? I am not a nanny state type person, but is there concern with that type of water feature in a public space with kids and potentially drowning? I know that sounds crazy, but that is something I think we should think through, because, little kids can run through there, the mom or dad could be looking elsewhere, and is that the type of thing we would need a lifeguard at? Are there issues like that we thought through?
This is just a concept based on an existing facility that's in Portland. I don't know if it gets to 12 inches deep in Portland or not. We've got kids running through it all day long at that facility, but this is something that would likely be different than the Jameson Square example. So we would have to work all of that out. It might be that we limit the depth of water accumulation, or it might be that we wind up with something that is different, just as part of the design process.
I'm all for it. I think it's cool. I love water features, and we should have a water feature there that ties us to the river. It's just our job to ask
We could check with
the
Portland,
dumbest
too.
and the hardest questions.
We could check with Portland and find out what their cycle is. It might be like a 2-minute cycle or something, or there may be a way that they regulate it, or they have lifeguards or something, but we can check to see how they do theirs.
Thank you. I think these are all awesome and great, and I went to, I think, 8 of the 10.
Like all of them.
I had to miss 2, but going to these workshops, and I think I talked with over 45 different members of the community, is really nice. There's a lot of folks out there with a lot of good ideas that are really positive about these types of open spaces in our town, and I'm glad to be able to be a small part of helping to move this forward, but the staff deserves tons of kudos. The workshops were awesome. Thank you. Go for it, Nick.
Great job as always on this. I appreciate the level of work, and especially during a short time frame that Aaron and Tracy and Paul and your teams did to put this all together. I know it was not for the faint of heart, so thank you for your efforts here. One last question I wanted to just clarify on a date. I know there was a very compressed timeline that we had to do to make these grant submission timelines. When was the potential announcement or award date on these?
I think we figured spring, maybe early in the year, hopefully.
Okay, that's it. Again, thank you guys. Great job.
Danny, go ahead. All right, I think that's no further questions. Thank you. Consent agenda, item 3, consideration of the approval of the June 4th minutes.
Motion to approve?
Second.
So motion to approve the minutes by Commissioner Eckler, seconded by Commissioner Hargrove. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none. Consent agenda passes. Regular agenda, item 4, workshop on the Bees Lake Habitat Restoration Plan.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. My name is Doug Brown. I'm with Douglas Environmental, and with me tonight is Joanna Liu with HDR Engineering. And I'm going to talk about the Bees Lakes Habitat Restoration Plan. I have a PowerPoint presentation. This is a grant that the city received from the Delta Conservancy to do planning for the Bees Lakes area. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the objectives that we're trying to achieve in doing this plan. I'm going to talk, kind of orient you on where Bees Lakes is located, if there anyone who doesn't know where it's located. Talk a little bit about the recreational context, go into some discussion about the scope of work. Then we have started to develop some conceptual alternatives, so I'll discuss those alternatives, and then we'll talk about next steps as far as the planning process. So we're still early in the planning process, but we wanted to come tonight to give you an update of where we are and to get some input from you on the work that we're doing. So with that, I'm going to dive in. So the objectives, this, as I said, was a grant that was provided by the Delta Conservancy. Their focus is on restoration, habitat restoration in particular, with Prop 1 funding. And so the objectives reflect that. It's basically, we're looking to evaluate opportunities to restore disturbed habitat and historic physical and ecological processes in the Bees Lakes area. We're looking to explore approaches to improving the pond water quality. There are 2 ponds that I'll show you on subsequent slides that were created due to breaches in the levees, historic breaches in the levees, so they're actually scour ponds. They're also called the duck pond area, and I know there's some other names for them as well. And actually, if you can skip back, Katie, just a second. So we're also looking at opportunities to better manage public access. If we're looking to do restoration in this area, we want to make sure that there's not some access issues that could degrade the habitat, and also provide some ability for folks to use the Bees Lake area more as an open space kind of amenity. And then just looking at public health and safety, ways to ensure that we're protecting public health and safety with the properties. So with that, so just to orient you, the Bees Lakes area is in the Southport area of the city. It is directly southwest of Linden and northeast of Davis Avenue, right on the Sacramento River. It has a levee going right through the middle of it. And if we can go to the next slide, you'll see that's South River Road, right through the middle of the property. The 2 ponds are those green areas. Right now, they're fairly stagnant ponds, and so that's the algae on top. The larger is to the bottom, the smaller one is up towards further to the northeast. The property is directly adjacent to the Sacramento River, and then the little pocket residential neighborhood in the city of Sacramento is to the south. And you'll notice on this picture, this was an older picture, it doesn't have the Southport levee setback. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see that. I just really like this picture. I stole this from Paul's photos of the Southport area. The levee that I was talking about is on the left side of this photo, so that is or South River Road. That connects Sherwood Harbor to the Sacramento Yacht Club, and so that portion of the levee in that area has been maintained to maintain that connection, but the levee has been removed going to the north and to the south. And so the new levee is being constructed in the area where all the dirt is located here. This is a little bit older, so that levee is actually in place now. So the whole portion of Bees Lakes is actually within inundation area. There's the portion on the riverside that gets inundated now, and then the portion between the old levee and the new levee that the only thing protecting that area from inundation is that old levee. And so with that, I wanted to put some context just as far as how this fits within the city's objectives from a recreational standpoint. We are, as part of the public access management, trying to identify recreational components that could be included in this planning effort. And so there was a study done a few years ago that both Joanna's company and I were involved in looking at doing a bike trail along the top of the new setback levee. And that bike trail would basically create a large loop through the area. Bees Lakes is, if you consider this an upside down camel with the 2 humps going down, it's right where the saddle would be, I guess. And so, a bike trail, which is the pink line, and I apologize, there's a lot of detail on this map, it's a little hard to see, but it's the pink line, would travel right along the top of that levee or at the base of the levee, depending on how it's implemented, and would provide access to that Bees Lakes area. At least people would be on the bike trail right above the Bees Lakes area. And so we're looking at, are there ways to connect to that recreational amenity that we hope is coming soon, and the open space areas within Bees Lakes. And if you look at Linden Road, right at the base of Linden Road, there's a property there where that was identified as a trailhead. And my understanding is the city has acquired a grant to actually develop that trailhead, and we have some shots of that on the next slide. So this would be a parking area and trailhead that would provide access to the levee, which is just upstream of Bees Lakes. So we really see an opportunity here to connect those from a recreational standpoint to that enhanced habitat area. This identifies some of the components that would be included. You'd have trail markers and signage, and I'm not sure if we considered restroom facilities out here or not, but we did look at restroom facilities along the trail. And so the next slide is an oblique view of this, gives you a sense of the parking lot and then the levee and the ramps that would go up to the levee from this facility, and then it would extend over to the Bees Lakes area. And so we see this all as providing sort of a context for the residential development that's being proposed in the area. There's large residential development proposed in Southport that I'm sure you're aware of. There's going to be a lot more people coming to the area, and so that's part of why we're looking at what can we do as far as the planning to identify recreational amenities, design it so it's safe, and enhances habitat in a way that meets the objectives of the grant. So with that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the scope of work that we've embarked on. We're in the process of defining environmental baseline conditions, just getting a sense of all the resources and constraints on the site. We're also in the process of establishing a stakeholder advisory group that would provide input on the different alternatives, the conceptual alternatives that we're coming up with. We've done some stakeholder outreach already, and we want to try and formalize that. We're in the process of developing conceptual restoration alternatives that we want to get input from those stakeholders on. We will be analyzing and evaluating the alternatives, and then refining that to a preferred alternative. And our grant includes preparing 65% design plans for that preferred alternative, and then conducting CEQA compliance. We structured it that way so we could have it positioned well for an implementation grant from the Delta Conservancy or other funding sources. So I have a couple slides here. I just want to show you the context before I jump into the discussion of the conceptual alternatives. This is, unless you're out here when it's really wet, you don't realize how much water is on the water side. I didn't realize that until I was out here taking pictures in March of this year. And so this is on the levee, just upstream of Sherwood Harbor. And you can see just in the corner, the Sacramento River is in the background, but it's basically inundated almost up towards the top of the levee. So that really inundates. And if we go to the next slide, Katie, you could see part of the harbor in the background, but that's the river basically kind of filling up that footprint of Bees Lakes that's on the old river side. So just with that context in mind, I'm going to jump into the alternatives. And what we've come up with so far is, the way I'd categorize it is sort of the bookends of the extremes of what we can look at. And so these are our initial concepts. It includes a minimal grading alternative, a water quality connection alternative, and a full floodplain connection alternative. And with that, I'll jump to the first one. This is the minimal grading alternative. You have the two ponds that are identified in blue. The idea here is to add fill to those ponds. They're fairly deep now and they're fairly stagnant. So if you added some fill, you could create some potentially emergent marsh, enhance the habitat, maybe clean up some of the contaminants that we think are in the ponds, and just improve the habitat and improve public safety associated with those ponds. And so if we can go to the next slide. So that fill component is something we look at throughout the alternatives, and then the remaining of these components are also included in those other alternatives. So this is sort of the base alternative. We are looking at targeting the removal of invasive species, planting native riparian habitat in some of the disturbed areas. A lot of this is pretty dense riparian, but there are some areas that are disturbed. Integrating potential recreational amenities and public access, cleaning up some of the trash and debris that's in the area, and then just cleaning up the soils and the water quality associated with the ponds. And so with that, the second alternative, really the difference here is focused on trying to improve the water quality in the ponds by connecting to the Sacramento River. So we would have culverts that would connect all the way through to the Sacramento River. They'd be screened so fish can't actually get into the ponds. And then the ponds, which now are hydraulically connected to the river through groundwater, they basically, as the river rises, they start to rise, and as the river falls, they start to fall. This would be a more direct connection, which would really enhance the water quality and have the exchange between the river and the ponds. And then the other components are similar to the alternative one. And so these are the components here. It's basically the difference is that connection to the Bees Lakes ponds directly to the Sacramento River. And the third alternative is a more aggressive connection to the Sacramento River. The idea here is to actually have fairly regular exchange between the river and the ponds and between the ponds themselves. So we would excavate out a large ditch basically through the canal. We'd have to have some structure so you could still drive on top of that, on top of the road, so you'd still have the connection between the two harbors. But you would have a more regular flow of water coming in from the Sacramento River into the ponds and between the ponds. And as you saw with those pictures, you get quite a bit of inundation when the river is high. So you would have a lot of water coming in here and going out. And part of this is trying to create salmon habitat. You really are creating inundated floodplain habitat by doing this. There's a lot of complexity, though, with this alternative. That's why I said it's a bookend. There may be a lot of maintenance issues or sedimentation and erosion issues over the long term. And so we wanted to identify this partly to address the grant requirements of looking at providing fish benefits, but also just wanted to explore it to see if it makes sense as far as how this would be managed over the long term and the ecological benefits that could be achieved by implementing this. So for that, again, it's the full connection to the Sacramento River, and then the other components are similar to those described before. And so the next slide, I just provide, this is an example of a culvert crossing in the Folsom area. I'm not sure if what we would design would be as large as this, but just to give you a concept of what we're talking about. And so if we did put something like this into the levee, you would have to excavate out to both the lakes and to the river to get that access. So there would be removal of riparian habitat associated with that. So we have to look at the trade-off of you lose some riparian habitat to create inundated floodplain habitat. And so that's part of what we would be doing is this study. And then the next steps in this study, we're here tonight to get input from you on these conceptual alternatives, what we've kind of come up with so far. And then we're going to formalize the stakeholder group and do much more outreach and get those folks involved in identifying what they might be interested in that area. Then we're going to be analyzing the different alternatives, and we're going to come up with a recommended preferred plan. That will be in the fall of this year. We'll circulate a final plan or a draft plan for review, public review for 30 days, and then once we get input back on that draft plan, then in the beginning of the year, we'd go into the design phase and then the CEQA phase. So that's my presentation tonight. I do want to thank Tracy for allowing us to come tonight and present to you, and open for any questions that you may have.
Start with Danny.
Just a quick clarification on the second alternative and the third. I see a lot of compromise in the soil there, especially on the third one. But on the second one, when you say there's a fish screen, is that to keep the fish from going into the lakes, or?
It's basically you're trying to keep salmon and other fish in the Sacramento River from getting into the ponds, because if they get in and the ponds go down, they might not be able to get out.
Okay, but doing that culvert, since I just wanted, just for clarification purposes,
Sure.
the setback levee is in a higher grade. So it's going down towards the river, correct?
That's
Well, the
generally
culvert's-
correct, yes, yeah,
Okay.
yes, that's correct. So the setback levee is basically the highest thing out there now.
Okay.
And then you have it drops down to the interior portion of the Bees Lakes, with the lakes bottoms being the lowest areas in there. And then you have the South River Road Old Levee, which is lower than the setback levee. And then it drops down further to the Sacramento River.
Okay, and one last thing, with all the compromising all of that, if there's let's say the river rises a lot, will it flood it out like Discovery Park, for example, in Sacramento?
We're still doing the analysis on how much area would get inundated. We do think a good portion of it could get inundated in a decent size storm event.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so we would have to take that into consideration when we're looking at recreational opportunities. What we've talked about is maybe trails around the lakes area, maybe some viewing platforms on the old levee, things that wouldn't create a problem if they're not in the inundation zone. If a trail's in the inundation zone, it's not a problem.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Rouge, you got any questions? Okay.
I can't have my mic on.
I can hear you.
Sorry. With the third one, I'm sorry, I didn't hear. That allows them in, or none of them would, right?
The third one would. That's the largest connection, so that would be really one of the main purposes of that alternative would be to provide that exchange between the Sacramento River and the ponds to create inundated floodplain habitat. There's a real desire on the state's part to try and create more inundated floodplain habitat for salmon, just because of the dire straits of the salmon population in the river and in the delta. So they have a real focus on funding projects that can enhance salmon habitat. And so that's part of why we're looking at it and see opportunities here.
Sorry, does that mean that going with the third concept would, or like the grants from the state, would be most favorable for the state to see the salmon within that concept?
I don't think I could answer that right now. Well, I do know that the Delta Conservancy, that seemed to be more of their focus, but we weren't really looking and didn't discuss in a lot of detail the water quality alternatives. Part of what we would need to do is set out criteria for how the city would select an alternative, and cost will play into that. So cost could be a factor as far as grant decisions from the state. Yeah, and the sort of the balance of the cost of implementing the project and how much salmon habitat you get. So I can't answer right now whether.
I have one more question.
Sure.
About I know you showed the picture.
Commissioner Ahmad, can you turn on your mic just for asking a question so that the public can hear? Thank
No
you.
problem. The picture that you showed us was a local picture, right? The one with the, kind of the bridge over the water. You put it on the.
Oh, that was, yes, the photo of the large bridge culvert,
Yeah.
that is in the Folsom area.
Folsom areas. Besides Folsom, are there other examples of any of the three concepts, just to kind of get a sense of like other cities or areas?
There are examples that we could identify, and we'd probably want to include in the report just to give a better sense of that. That was just something one of the engineers had worked on and sent to me. But yeah, there's a variety of culvert designs that could be implemented for this, and so we could include those in the report. As far as the smaller water connection alternative, those are probably more likely either a corrugated metal pipe or concrete pipe, something similar to a sewage drainage pipe along those lines. So, sure.
We did have one member of the public who asked to speak about this, so we're going to bring Don up.
Sounds great.
You'll still be on call to answer more questions.
Thanks. I thought I'd speak after the commissioners made comments. My comments are not particularly cohesive at this point. There was something that came up. You showed the picture of, I guess it was the corner of Linden and South River Road. That land was originally owned by one of our members, and it was proposed to the city to include a trailhead for horses and a water trough for horses, because we used to ride through Bees Lakes, and we used to ride on South River Road. And through the whole planning process in city council, we heard different stories, but we're not really sure where that really ended up. So that's a question. Whenever we hear bike trails, we of course think equestrian trails. You're going to do a bike trail, you can do an equestrian trail. The whole issue about stakeholders, happy to help. Happy to be one of the stakeholders if you're interested in involving us. One of our main concerns beyond the trails for everybody is, and it came up a little bit earlier on the Prop 68 grants, we agree with you that the more positive use people we can put on the river, whether it's the barn or the Broderick Boat Ramp, the better it is, given the negative use people. So anytime you can put bikes out there, terrific. Anytime you can put horses out there, terrific. Especially at our own expense, we've cleaned up Honda Hills in the past. We got our own dumpsters, picked up the tires and stuff like that. So we're happy to do those kinds of things. I think that one of the things that just keeps jumping out at us is there's the new levee and there's the original South River Road levee. The original, the old levee, which I heard, is that still available for bikes and people? We heard access to the marinas, so there's part of it that's still there. But the original old South River Road levee was supposed to be for public access, horses, bikes, etc., especially after they built the new one. So we're kind of hoping that still the case, still gives us access to the Bees Lakes area. It was interesting to see you brought up the bridge in Folsom. I saw a horse trail, and it was concrete. And, nice fence, great for bikes, great for horses. So we think we fit in to everything we've heard so far. And that's actually my comment so far. And we'd be willing to help as a stakeholder if you're willing to invite us. Thank you.
I have a couple questions and comments. I promise it's less than 20. At some point, I think I would love to have the city staff come up and address some of the issues. I think Don has a couple different items I'd love to rope him in on, no pun intended. But first of all, it's just as we move forward on this project, I think there's a good opportunity here for some history of the city. Does anyone in the room know why we call that Bees Lake?
I was looking for someone to tell me, to be honest.
I can spread two rumors why we call it Bees Lake. I don't know what the answer is, but there's, as I've done a recent project on the city of the map, on a map of the city neighborhoods, and I was at the Pheasant Club Rotary. So the first easy one is why we call it Bees Lake, is because you'd go out there when in the 60s, 70s, people kept bees out there, and there were bees out there. That was the obvious one. But I presented at Rotary at Pheasant Club, and somebody who'd lived in town for 80 years said he had believed the reason why it was called Bees Lake is because farmers were spent more time in the air, or people spent more time in the air in the way back when. And as you flew over West Sacramento, the two lakes together at the time looked like it made a B. I don't know which one to believe, but that's, again, I said I'd be happy to spread a rumor. But I think that that would be a neat thing, and I think the West Sacramento Historical Society, at some point, Don and Nikki can arm wrestle and the rest, and we can come up with whatever the creation story is there. But a piece of this project, I think, would be, aside from the environment, is some history. There's a lot of history in Southport with the ag and happening. I think that would be neat. The other one is just understanding is how it was created. I think you did it's really interesting how it was created, and it was funny, we were out there on a city tour, and I asked how water was getting in there, and the person who was there as the expert said, we really don't know. The groundwater explanation seems to make sense and is neat. I want to get to the horse stuff in a minute because I have a couple questions there. But I think as we do this presentation and as we move forward, it would really behoove us to talk a little bit more about the flood protection aspects on this project. Not that this project is part of the flood protection, but how it will interact with all the new flood protection stuff that's happening. If you haven't been out to Bees Lake, it's kind of hard to conceptualize what we're talking about here, even with the pictures. Basically, the new levee that's been put out there, everything we're talking about is on the other side of this new levee. The Bees Lake area forms a little bathtub within this new setback levee area. So the new setback levee comes in, then then there's a loop road that comes out that hits the portion of the old levee that is being maintained. And I think that that's going to be important in terms of horse access. The other pieces of the levee outside of those two roads are currently gated off, but my understanding of that is because it's still not open to the public. None of that is technically open to the public right now. But my understanding is that at some point, accessing those remnant levees that go out and make peninsulas are supposed to be accessible to the public, but I don't know if an actual call has been made on that or not. And do you know?
I don't know, I'm looking at Paul Dirksen because I'm sure he might know, but.
Paul, throw something at me if I'm saying something incorrect, too.
Nothing's fully decided, so.
Okay, so I think that that's an important thing.
One thing to remember is that the new levy is paid for by the state by about 70%. And we have responsibilities to transfer real estate rights to the state because of their financial contributions. Generally, that includes most everything in the levy itself, and then other features that are incorporated by the levy by default, where the new area between the old and the new levy will also have certain features certain real estate rights that have to be transferred. We still are exploring all of the limitations and the opportunities, if you will, for some of those lands.
So, just as a committee of one, I would love to urge the city and the city staff to everything on the other side of the new setback levy is let's figure out how to have that be as open as possible. I absolutely agree, anywhere where there's bikes and pedestrians, there should be horses too. But then this gets to the question of, and there's a creation story here too, is the rumor, the fact, whatever it is, of horse access to the actual levees themselves. I know we've been told for a long time that that's a federal issue, that you can't have horses on there. Is that, Paul?
It's in the state code of regulations.
It's a state issue?
Yes.
So, not to get too into the details here, but as we're thinking about how to access Bees Lake, is the fact that there's access road going over the setback levee that is paved. Is there opportunity to explore allowing horses to use the paved access road to cross over the setback levee that would then give access to Bees Lake and the remnant levees? The question there would then be, can they be on the old levee that's being maintained on that side of the setback levee. I don't want to get too into details there, but I think that that would be the hiccup. But I mean, it would be great to, if we can figure out a solution to use the paved roads, because the horses aren't going to hurt the paved roads. And I mean, there's got to be some loophole, or there's got to be some exception for passage of equine over levees. I mean, it just can't be a straight ban forever everywhere in the state. And I'd love to encourage the city to look at that as we do it, because Bees Lake and the other side, I don't know what we call the other side of Bees Lake. There's the Bees Lake Basin, and then there's the riverside. I call that area where the rope used to be. I don't think there's an official name for that, though. It's very overgrown with blackberries and stuff right now, but that could also be a great place to ride a horse in the fall. So I would really like to recommend that we look into those issues. We have the opportunity here to have a really neat recreation area in the city of West Sacramento, something that's fairly unique and fairly neat. And since we're starting with this blank slate, and since the state has invested so much here, and since they are working with us a lot, I really strongly advocate that we fight to get horses up and over. I'm sure having them being able to walk on the setback levee is going to be a no-go. But if we could figure out a way to get them up and over and into Bees Lake, and even accessing some of those remnants, would be, I think, a really special thing. In terms of the options, I would defer to the experts here. But I do think with especially option 3, where you're seeing a lot more water inundate into the other side of the remnant maintained levee and filling up the Bees Lake Basin, that we do talk a little bit more about how that is interacting with SOFCA and with RD 900 and with maintenance issues there. I'm sure you guys are all working that out. I just mean for us citizens who are hearing things that are happening with the levee, just to hear those assurances that the city is thinking it through. And there's always that healthy tension between recreation and maintenance of the levees that I think we should be extra cognizant of right now, and make sure that as we talk about this, that's a key piece, as well as the environmental stuff. Thank you. It's a great project. I love this piece of land. I go out there a lot. There's neat human uses out there right now. If you haven't been out there, you can drive right up to it right now, park a car, and go walk through it, and it's like you're in a different world. It's a beautiful piece of land. Thank you.
You may come back.
I was ready.
Thank you. First of all, I apologize to my colleagues and the public for being late today. My horse colicked yesterday, and I had to remain at the barn to administer some medicine for his evening treatment. A couple on two different tracks. One is Matthew mentioned. It seems to me that there's some confusion in our heads about, is this a flood control project? Is it a parks? Is it a restoration project? Is it a recreation project? And so my concern would be that we attempt to optimize and not minimize, not forsake an optimal outcome for one objective by a less optimal approach to another. So not mediocrity across the board, but something that's dynamic and those uses align. And I know by your presentation that you're also looking at how that is. I'm being concerned about climate change and rising sea levels and floods and extreme weather events. I have a prejudice towards marshland and taking up the floodwaters and those kinds of things to avoid some of the other, loss of property and lives, et cetera. So, but I also recognize the opportunities that this area provides. So if you could just tell me a little bit about how you're thinking in terms of the optimizing the uses of this area.
Sure. So I should clarify that it is not a flood project. There will be some minor benefit of water coming into this area in that it won't be in the Sacramento River, and that would lower stage downstream, but the lowering would be minuscule. It would be really sort of even difficult to calculate. It would be so small. So, and part of that is because the South River Road, the old levee, is no longer a flood control levee. It just happens to be there and protecting the Bees Lakes area. But then there's the new levee behind the Bees Lakes that is really the flood control facility. So our focus was looking at it from a habitat standpoint, and that's how we crafted the grant submittal. That's how the city crafted the grant submittal, with the understanding that there was going to be more human use in this area, and that human use would kind of look at it as an open space area, because that levee could fail, there could be inundation, and so we didn't want to identify recreational components within that inundation area, but we wanted to also see if we could create an amenity for the city, basically an open space park type amenity that could be accessed, that we think will be accessed whether the city tries to create some management or not. And so it's really a habitat restoration plan that integrates sort of access management and recreational components.
Okay. Super. I don't want to dive too deep in the details, but could you give us just a flavor of the species that used to be there that have left, that may come back, or that we may populate, both flora, fauna?
Yeah, so there's a wide variety of species that use it now, that have historically used it. I think what's happening is there's some areas that are transitioning non-native species, or the grape and blackberry are coming in. There's a native blackberry plant in there now, but most of it is the Himalayan blackberry, which is non-native. There's western pond turtle in that area. There's Swainson's hawk, maybe giant garter snake. I'm not sure on that. We'll have to check. But then just a wide variety of raptors and other species. And then when it inundates, on the water side, that's inundated floodplain habitat for salmon and other fish species. And so the concern is that the non-natives coming in and kind of crowding out some of those others.
Yeah, absolutely. At least there aren't any pythons yet.
Haven't seen anything yet.
Good.
I think the most dangerous thing down there are the paintball guns. You gotta watch out for.
Are figs native? There's a ton of figs in there. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think they are, to be honest. Not the ones that are in there. I'm not a biologist myself. I rely on my biologists to help. So I try and.
So there would be an educational component in terms of identifying the species that are riparian habitat.
We are basically working on an environmental baseline report right now that identifies the habitat characteristics. It'll include mapping of the vegetation and then use.
Role it plays in the ecosystem, et cetera.
Exactly. And it is a unique site. I mean, when you look at that area, you just don't have areas of that much dense riparian that remain any longer. And so it really is a unique and beautiful site.
Well, sounds like an exciting project. My other questions are procedural. I'm a little bit confused by the fact that the CEQA compliance comes at the end of the process, and when you've already sorted through alternatives and selected a preferred alternative and had public input and comment periods, et cetera. So I'm a little bit confused about how the pre-process syncs with the CEQA compliance process for selecting preferred alternatives and public input.
So I'm a CEQA practitioner. That's sort of what I do. So I've learned the constraints of CEQA. And my concern with CEQA is usually when you get into the California Environmental Quality Act process, you really have usually identified a project, you've committed to the project, and you start moving along. You get public input, but you just have that one project. And so it's a difficult process for people to affect change and to do sort of the environmental planning when you're in that process, because you want to get through it, you have certain requirements for public hearing and review periods, and then you certify it, and then a decision is made by the city council once you finish that CEQA process. So we really wanted to try and identify a process for working with stakeholders and vetting a variety of alternatives before we committed to the CEQA process and the design process. The design process, we included that level of design because the Delta Conservancy's grant guidelines were really focused on, they want to get projects implemented. They don't particularly enjoy spending money on planning projects. They'd rather spend it on implementation projects. But it's hard to get projects, implementation projects for it unless you've done the planning. So it's really necessary. So we really see this as an opportunity for the community to engage and affect what the ultimate project is. The city hasn't decided, oh, we want to do this out there. They want to use this process to flesh it through. And then you get to the CEQA process and you could say, okay, this is what we're going to evaluate and go forward. So I hope that clarifies.
Yeah, I mean, what you described, it's conceptually what CEQA was supposed to do in the first place, but that apparently it doesn't do anything.
It doesn't usually work well in that way.
So it's become.
Unless you evaluate multiple alternatives in equal level of detail, and that's more elaborate, much more analysis, much more cost, and so it tends to work better to work with stakeholders to develop the components of a project and look at the pluses and minuses, constraints and opportunities, and get buy-in. Then when you go to the CEQA process, you're less likely to have some opposition to that project.
Interesting. Well, it sounds like you've got stakeholder process in the works, so
yes.
Congratulations. And
thank you.
I hope our horse people are part of it. And thank you very much for all your work. Sounds like an exciting project.
And just real quickly, since it is more of an environmental piece aspect to it, there are agricultural companies here in town that would probably want to contribute to a place called Bees Lake that are really into and loving bees. So maybe there's a component there that maybe they could join in the conversation on.
Yeah, good suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out and making a presentation on this tonight. This is an area that is near and dear to my heart. I was riding up and down on my bike on South River Road since I was 12 years old, and I always looked on over at the marshy Bees Lake and the sediment of algae and everything that was in there that half the time you didn't know if there was water there or not. Yeah. So, but being around this, this is an area that I'm sensitive to, and I really want to echo a lot of the sentiments from Commissioner Hargrove that this is an area that I do think we really need to challenge and ask the questions about what we can do to really make this an environment. This is such an asset, even to your point as well, too, about having that healthy tension about where we can really think creatively, especially for our Trail Riders Association. I've been sharing this levee with you guys for many, many years, and I really appreciate the need for something like that to continue. Yeah. This is an element, especially as we're becoming more urbanized in Southport. I think it's just more critical that we absolutely go and embrace that and what we can do to move ahead. I know that we went through and approved the amount for the initial study on here, and certainly to your point that there are many different elements between the three plans. From a fiscal standpoint, do we have kind of a sense of what those look like, and from a spend on each one, and what the reality of a grant level that we would go and receive to effectuate this?
We don't at this point. As you can tell from the exhibits, they're very conceptual. We know, obviously, that the minimal grading will have the lowest cost, and then go from there. And so that will be part of the planning process, will be to identify the costs associated with each of the alternatives and get a better sense of what that would entail, not only the construction costs, but also long-term operation and maintenance, which is a critical issue for this site. It's a pretty good sized site, and we could be making some large changes, and so we want to make sure we're thinking about that long-term commitment from the city.
Would that fall under the city or under RD 900, or would that be something still to work out as far as from a longer-term maintenance?
So the property is owned by Wasafka, but it's not managed right now. It's not a part of the flood control facility. So it's not, the Bees Lakes area is not managed by RD 900.
Okay.
They manage the new levee.
Right.
And so we'll be working through exactly the ownership over the long term and who would be responsible for operations and maintenance. It hasn't been spelled out yet.
Okay. Just, and then two other last points about this, and I do know that certainly we're not to a point of utilizing this. Again, we're looking at this more of an environment, and I agree that this is something that we need to invest in, maximize really the use of the environment. And to Don's point of going through and the more good people that we have going through and utilizing these assets, it's just only going to make it healthier for everyone. Is this something that, say, either with alternative 2 or 3, would there be an element on here where we would need to ever close those just from a flood control, or are we satisfied that, they would, be amply controlled with the new setback levy?
I think for option 2, we could easily integrate some flaps on the culverts to manage them. So if you needed to do some maintenance and you wanted to close those off, you could do so. It's more complicated with option 3, and so we haven't explored that at this point.
Okay. Yeah, I'm certainly more in the favor of alternative 2 or 3. I actually think it would enhance the area versus where it is now, being very stagnant, being very densely forested around it as far from an accessibility standpoint. I think would just be even a better benefit, and the more integration we can get with our communities and certainly associations around that are interested stakeholders and parties for this year to really maximize it. I think unfortunately, it's one of the best kept secrets around West Sacramento. We need to go through and wave the flag for it a bit.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, yeah, on that note, what you just said about accessibility and use of it, I kind of disagree with you on that, in that option 1 really provides ability to do 2 different types of habitat restoration. So you have your inundation area on the river side of the remnant levee. That would be the picture you had with the flood water. That comes in there. There's your water habitat. We have an opportunity to actually get more use out of between the 2 levee section if we don't inundate that with an actual connection and let it naturally flow. Do the fill to maintain the water quality, get that part settled, but more leaning toward the idea of having a, controlled dry spot that you can actually use all the time. Because if you put, like last year's flood waters in there, that's going to be that flood water for the rest of the year. I mean, you saw how long the what do you call it, the finger retention, what are we calling those things?
The inundation areas.
The inundation areas north and south of here, those were full until like a couple months ago.
Yeah.
So seeing that we would have zero access to that area at all if we connected it hydrologically to the river, takes away an opportunity for us to use that for, the riparian restoration, those types of things. That can still happen. The plant restoration can still happen, but it's actually usable. Echoing what other people said, is we need to figure out how to get everyone over there, whether that's, since it is connected by the flood project seems to trump everything else that we do. So you can't get there without going over the levee, and if a horse isn't allowed on the levee, you can't go over the levee. I mean, that's a whole nother mess. But I think the point of here is to get commission input on the concepts to date. I think we've done a lot of the input on that, and I think the next step being the stakeholder meetings. You had a list of stakeholders, great list. I'm sure there's other people that would fall under there, with like local residents being the last one in there. I mean, a lot of people can qualify for that.
Yes.
So there is opportunity. It's then the engagement. That's all in this plan. I think it's a great start. I think it's a great spot, especially with the suburbanation, if you would call it, of the area and what's going to be coming down there. There's going to be a lot more need for large open space that is left undeveloped and it doesn't, just, open space doesn't mean it has to be just a grass field. It can be an actual open space that actually uses what's there naturally now. And it's a reminder to what it used to be. So there's a lot of opportunity for that, the education. I think you had great points about the minimal construction, viewing platforms, trails, things like that, there could be a major flood event that inundates that, and those things don't go away. But keeping it really simple to a point where it's a place where people can go and experience what's there now and still be able to experience what's there after this is all done. I mean, the alternative is you block it all off and you fill it in and you make it like a soccer field or something, but that doesn't help anybody at this point. So it also doesn't go toward how we were able to get the grant funding to do this in the first place. So I think looking at it that way is saying, okay, that we're getting the money to do this because we're doing this environmental restoration. We're not getting the money to do this to build a soccer field.
Yeah.
So getting that out there to everybody also, so when you have a stakeholder meeting and say, wow, we have all this land, why can't we build a skate park there or something?
Yeah.
So there's lots of stuff we can do. I think the next step being August, September, having those stakeholder meetings will be the great step for that. Any other comments from anybody? One more from Rouge.
Sorry, excuse my son. Hey, be quiet. Will the Environment and Utilities Commission be going over the plan as well?
We haven't identified that in the planning phase of this. That's something that I can talk with Tracy and Paul about, whether that makes sense to do it as part of this process. We don't have it identified right now.
Okay. The reason I asked is because having a friend who's a geologist, I know just speaking to all the things we're talking about, I would love to hear what they have to say about it, with their backgrounds and whatnot. So, yeah, we should consider it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That being said, one more question, or are you good?
I actually just want to say I came in tonight thinking option 3 was the best, but what your comments on option 1 and having that actually be available year-round and having half of the property being completely inundated and the other half being available year-round, Greg, made a lot of sense, and I appreciated those comments.
Chair Price, if I may say just a few words, and I probably should have teed you up, Doug, for this, but my predecessor was really passionate about trying to find ways to integrate recreation, education, habitat restoration into our flood improvement program. And this is a perfect example of a way that we were able to do that. With the Delta Conservancy, recreation isn't a primary focus for them. It's not even a secondary focus for them. It's difficult to get grant funding for projects like this that are recreation focused only. We know from our Parks Master Plan efforts that connecting people to nature is a very high priority. Trails was a high priority, and more natural open space areas for people to recreate that offer passive recreation opportunities. So we are being very careful about how we approach this project because it is a habitat restoration focused grant program. But that being said, we know that people want to access the site. We know there are still tremendous recreation and education opportunities as part of habitat restoration. And one of the alternatives that might provide the highest level of habitat restoration benefit may not be the best option for the city because it may be difficult for us to manage, to maintain, to fund on an ongoing basis. And there may be a high level of unpredictability with the regulatory process as well. So all of those things will be taken into consideration as part of this process. So I really appreciate your feedback and your openness to all of the different concepts. I think that it's important to do the analysis to really understand what levels of habitat restoration benefit we could possibly achieve. So if this particular grant program in Phase 2 for construction funding isn't the best fit, we still have really good information to use to go after other targeted grant programs. So I just appreciate your feedback. Thank you.
All righty, thanks a lot.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Great feedback. Thanks.
Item 5, update on the Recreation Center business plan.
Before we get into this item, I just want to make sure I disclose, I have a wife that teaches classes at the rec center and a daughter who does childcare at the rec center. I don't know if that is actually a conflict of interest that makes it so I can't listen to this. You're saying no? Okay.
No.
But I wanted to make sure that I disclose that.
That's fine. No conflict. My name is Paul Reyes, Recreation Manager at the West Sacramento Recreation Center. I'm here to provide a presentation on the Recreation Center business plan. The Parks and Recreation and Open Space Master Plan was approved by City Council in April 2019. Concurrent with that effort, staff and pros consulting have been working to develop a draft of the Recreation Center business plan. I want to note that we're really excited about this draft, and staff worked really, really hard in communicating with the consultant, providing ideas, suggestions, and the vision down the road based on the Parks, Recreation, Open Space Master Plan. Okay. I'm going to touch on a few things, on 5 things: prioritizing community needs and program plan, facility improvement opportunities, operational improvement opportunities, financial assessment, and membership options and implementation strategy. Prioritizing community needs at the rec center. It has been identified through the Parks Open Space Master Plan that there's high priorities of their needs from the community, such as adult fitness and wellness programs, water fitness programs, lap swimming, youth learn to swim, and then medium level from youth and adult sports programs, active older adult fitness and exercise programs, youth and fitness and wellness, tennis lessons and leagues, and so on down to the low of youth basketball, volleyball, sand volleyball, and things like that. The framework for programs and services, there we go, adult fitness and wellness programs. All these programs that I mentioned are things that we are implementing now. Part of this, the framework here is talks about the high priorities, which, again, what the community wants. We are implementing those programs, but there are things that, in terms of facilities, wanting to expand programs, because we don't have enough space within the facility, or there's other areas of the facility that are not being utilized correctly, or there's just, or it could be just a budget situation. Those are the same programs that I mentioned above. Same thing with the medium priority and the low priority. But with that, we have facility improvement opportunities. Again, part of it is the expansion of the fitness center. It's heavily used. The equipment, again, we've been there for 10 years now. The equipment is specifically cardio equipment. We don't have free weights. We don't have a lot of major equipment, and we would like to partly expand on that, which would be new equipment or leasing equipment, as I'll speak below or further down, but also expand in some of the facilities so we can get more people in there. Maximizing the climbing wall, which possibly remove the wall and utilize it for stretching warm-ups. Stretching and warm-ups. Again, these are all recommendations by the consultant and also discussions from our staff. Add birthday party space for the aquatic center, which we actually did. We added on the northwest side, we added a new tiki lounge and another area to run and implement birthday parties to serve the public. Also to renovate the Kinesis studio, create another studio that can concentrate on different things, whether it's another Zumba class or physical therapy. So there are a lot of different ideas to move that, because that room is underutilized right now. We have Kinesis equipment there, we have spin bikes, but we could probably use it for other areas that can bring in more people and serve more people. Operational, relocate multi-purpose space and childcare. Some of that is move the childcare to the front lobby area, utilize the childcare for space for meetings and health and fitness and PT or personal training, relocate the childcare and lounge, which means the childcare, which is a separate area, maybe moving it to the front entrance area. Add sports court lighting to the tennis courts, which would be big for us since it is used as a shared use with the school district. They do have a spring and fall tennis season, so it's somewhat difficult for us to use it. Typically, the summer is our most popular time, which it's either early morning or in the evening, since you can't really, it's too hot in the afternoon to play. Correct. Operational improvements. Continually update the operating manual. It's an ever changing document. Continually update operating hours. Those are some of the things that we've talked about in terms of low times, high times. Maybe Fridays are a little bit light in attendance, so change some hours to save some money. Develop written maintenance standards. We do have some of that. Develop a written marketing plan. We do have one in place, but a lot of this, again, is 10 years old, so it's tough to follow. We need staff to kind of help put this thing together. Consider centralizing administrative and guest services and functions. Staff currently do not only their primary job, but they're also doing front desk, or they're supervising childcare, or they're doing maintenance. So everybody wears 40 hats there, but it would be nice to centralize the administrative guest service function with another staff person. Evaluating cost benefits of increasing part-time hours in adult staff, aquatics, and guest services. Continue to grow. We don't have a lot of staff. We don't have a lot of, keeping up with the minimum wage funding. And so in order to continue to run these programs, we end up cutting staff. Maybe we may only have one scorekeeper running a gym versus you need ideally 3. Assign at least one full-time employee to maintenance facility. Again, all staff are wearing hats. We currently have one that's about 70% shared throughout the public works facilities, and then also over at the community center. It would be nice to have a dedicated person, because we do have a 150,000 square foot facility, which includes the building, aquatic center, and tennis courts. Address part-time employee pay compressions. As the minimum wage was going up, and I think it's still going to continue to go up until $15 an hour the next couple of years. We have a lot of new staff that are making the minimum wage, but we also have staff that haven't moved up with that minimum wage. So we may have people that have been there for 3 or 4 years that are making very similar to what a first-time person would be making. So we are working on that with budget, and so we're hoping that kind of goes through a little bit. Let's see. Replace obsolete fitness equipment, again, 10 years old. It's time to look forward and hoping and moving forward with possibly leasing equipment is one option, or outright purchasing another option. We prefer the leasing option. I think we're able to make changes every year, or every 3, maybe 5 years, based on how it's supported in terms of funding. Typically, or what we've established, is somewhere around the $50,000 to $60,000 annually. So if we can kind of do that for the next 20 years versus outright purchasing, and that's what we currently did. We outright purchased it, and 10 years later, we haven't really made any difference or changes in the equipment. This allows us to update equipment. It allows us to stay with the times, allows us to repair these things with the consult or with the contractor to make easy repairs versus bidding out or what to come out and fix these things. So then, again, part of that is purchasing equipment such as rowing machines, benches, free weights, stretching apparatuses. The financial, where are we at? Financial assessment. Consider updating membership structure. Part of that is that we want to continue to review and benchmark other areas. We now have many facilities here, or many fitness facilities, and we want to be able to keep update with even the equipment that we have and the facility, the type of people that we're serving. create two-tier membership with benefits. It's suggested that we do have an EFT program, but possibly changing the tier versus having a month, quarterly, semi-annual, and annual, and maybe having some different benefits of having a two-tier. Tier 1, for example, would be this price, and it would include childcare, birthday party, or whatnot, and then Tier 2 might be another option. So those are some of the options that they're suggesting. And then lastly, utilizing electronic fund transfer memberships. That's what we're currently using. We'd like to see where everybody goes on, it's kind of a standard in the industry, that everybody's kind of putting their credit card down, it's on the EFT program that allows just to keep everything going. It's more of a convenience. And then your implementation strategy. Key considerations, the fitness equipment replacement, create a 5-year replacement schedule for existing fitness equipment and replace most critical pieces. Again, I think it's really important. We're trying to move forward with this. Again, 10 years old, and I think with new items and new things, this will kind of boost the rec center. Maximize utilization of space, to better meet community needs. It goes back to where we were. We want to continue to expand, but sometimes there isn't an option to expand because there's no space, or we have to use other facilities and things like that. Implement renovation plans, seeking fund for implement renovation plans. Part of that, as I discussed earlier, part of the cardio equipment is there, but possibly maybe free weights or other benches and other opportunities, which would mean that part of the community room can be removed and move into that area for not only cardio, but a weightlifting area as well. So we'll be a little more well-rounded versus just cardio equipment. Increase part-time staffing levels. Again, part of that we're working directly with finance and Tracy. Part-timers are very important to us. They basically run the facility for us. They know what's going on, and they're good. Enhanced guest services. Going back to that, centralizing administrative and guest services functions, including rentals, by converting. Again, we all have a part of that. It would be nice to have supervisors or position people that can actually run the front desk, do rentals, and things like that. Increased maintenance service. Again, would love to have one full-time staff person dedicated to the recreation center. Membership packing restrictions. Going back to that, those are things that we need to do benchmarking and understand other facilities. And then finally, the pay compressions. These are all strategic actions that we want to move forward with, that we've discussed with staff and my director, Tracy Michael. And so we are implementing some things to try to make these things happen. That concludes my presentation. Any questions, input, suggestions, ideas? Nate.
Paul, my hat's off to you. You do an awful lot with very little over there, and I appreciate all that you do, and you've been doing it for some time now, and you really do yeoman's work. That being said, I agree with, the recommendations that you're putting on out and the ways that you're working through it. I think you're spot on. Couple things. I am not, I've been a member over at the rec center, but there are some areas that are deficient, like in the weight areas and things like that. There are areas where I particularly like to work out with, are just, they're missing there, right? So I think to remain competitive and the work that you're going down the path here, I think it's just going to bring more people in. I think to be more efficient at what you do, to really be you have a beautiful facility there, but it's to the point where I think you really need to reassess, what needs to happen there, and to be a best-in-breed facility and really look at the things from not only a staffing model, but, how things are organized to get maximum efficiency from the space, I think is sorely needed. full support, which you're doing here, again, the assessing of, equal pay for people who have been there for some time, and that's going to be a problem that as it continues to elevate, you better get in front of that from a strategy standpoint and know how you're going to do that just to keep everyone happy, right? So, I mean, there's a whole lot there, and the fact that you don't have even a full-time person dealing with that whole facility, I mean, it's just, again, it's a testament to you and your team of what you've been able to do over there, and Tracy certainly too, but, I mean, I think that this is something that we really need to get behind and make sure that you have the resources to have that facility, because, the longer, as other facilities are popping up in the area here, and each one has, something different that they offer, right? You will slowly get emerged out of the area, and if, it's going to introduce other people to come in the area and give you even more competition. So I think it's something that really to apply that focus now and really look at these things. It's absolutely needed, and I fully agree.
Thanks for coming, Paul. I've worked with you for many years and appreciate it since you were running the pool at the Old River City. So I think you do fantastic work, and you know that. I want to disclose my wife is a instructor, fitness instructor at the rec center. In fact, I think she might have been the first fitness instructor that was hired at the rec center. Just a lame claim to fame, but I want to make sure I shout that out. She has Friday morning yoga class, a weekend warrior class, if you want to go to it. But more importantly, what I want to say is my daughter works there too, and you've said this several times. The rec center is being compressed, some of their staff member, but you guys hire a ton of minimum wage young employees that actually do run that place. And it is a really neat opportunity. I understand it's hard for you as a professional to manage a huge cohort of young people every summer coming to work for you. The training is tough, just scheduling them is tough. So I commend you on that. But I want to thank you as a parent and as a member of this community for giving all these young folks exposure. And you've got all these kids who are aspiring to be lifeguards who are going through the programs so they can lifeguard there. My daughter is become kind of a jack of all trades in her little area. She does pool check-in. She does childcare. As a 15-year-old and a 16-year-old, she's doing childcare. It's given her great experience. She runs the rock wall when she's working sometimes, and she's doing front desk. And these are all experiences that have made her age in a good way in responsibility and maturity by having this type of interaction. So I think that is a community service that we sometimes overlook that the community center is doing. We need a whole nother community center. You don't have enough funding and you don't have enough space. We need to figure that out. We need to figure out how to do more amenities on the north side. And I know that's not even in our near midterm plan right now. But that the closing down of the pool at Washington High, Golden State was not the city's issue. That pool was old and it needed to be closed down, but it disappeared a very, very important amenity on the north side that I think that Parks and Rec should be doing every day, should be thinking about how do we figure out some type of amenity like that for the north side again. And I know that that's difficult. I also think, I know that our pool season is compressed, even at the new place, even though the demand seems to be through the roof. I don't know if the demand is actually through the roof, though, but it seems to be pretty popular when you're open. I know at one point, the pool had a private grant from the Van de Heek Camp family that owned Wicked West Pizza to keep the pool open over the winter. I don't think that there's a grant there anymore, so I think our pool season is very shortened. I know running the pool is expensive, difficult, hard, a headache, but it's such an important amenity. And I know you're trying to figure out how to do it. I know you have lifeguard laws that you have to do now. The minimum wage is hurting you on that. The pump breaks down 3 times a day. It's very expensive, but as a as a member of this community, I want to say keep working on that, keep on keeping on, to figure out a way to expand the pool season, figure out a way to make the pool cheaper. I think it's, what, $7 a day if you want to go, if you're not a member and you want to go swim at the pool. It's a lot of money. And I know that is set at that cost for a reason, and I support you having it set at that cost. But if I had to choose between free weights and getting folks that can otherwise afford to go be at a private gym and figuring out a way to redirect some money to the pool so 9 and 10-year-olds can go to the pool in June and July for less money, that would be something I would love to see. We've asked for this before. I'd love to see the rec center work out a deal with VIA for people that want to come from Broderick or Bright or Westfield or Westmore Oaks, State Streets, the Bridge District, want to get out to the rec center using VIA. I think it would be great if we could figure out a way to have $1 to get to the rec center. I know it's public transportation, but it's great public transportation that we have a lot of flexibility and ability to work with. I think VIA is doing a partnership with YOLO Bus right now for free transfers, and having some sort of deal to get out to the rec center, or even for kids going to the pool that are under 18 for $1 or something would be a really neat thing to do. I do want to know if you're having any issues with the jump bikes that are coming out to you. That's a no.
No,
So that's kind of a popular thing, and I love seeing that the bikes are out there and people are using them. That is
And
one.
they actually park them in the stalls. They
Yeah,
don't leave them
that's-
right in front of the door.
And that's great. I mean, usually when you hear about jump bikes, you hear about people complaining about them, but I know that is not, I know that's a fairly small minority and that a lot of people are responsible with them, so I do love to hear that. At some point, I'd love to hear how the relationship is going with the school district. I know in the beginning, this was a new partnership, a complicated partnership. There was a lot of scheduling issues to work out, how the athletic teams worked with that. And I know there was some hiccups in the beginning, and it was only due to, it was so many moving parts moving together. But it seems like the school district and the city are working together there is really good. I'd love to hear if the slides were worth the money we invested in putting them in, if they're being used, and if you would put the slides in again at the pool. And then my last question is if you renovate the telekinesis room, are we worried that less West Sacramentans will be able to move stuff with their mind? It's a total joke.
Telekinesis.
It was a joke.
Telekinesis room.
Anyways,
You want me to comment on some of those things?
I mean, I would love to. I mean, this is our opportunity to
Okay.
hear from you. You know what you're talking
Right.
about, and this is, I think, an amazing community amenity, and want to hear about
For
it.
several years now, for many years, we've been working really well with River City High School, with the athletic director, Jamie King, so there really hasn't been any problems. Yes, there might be some scheduling issues, but we're always able to make things work, so I appreciate the school district, River City High School, and Jamie King for working collaboratively together here and making things work for both parties in a positive way. The other question? The slides in terms of
Putting in those slides, I mean, they look neat, I think they draw people in. I think
it's worth it. It's an amenity there. I think people enjoy that. It adds a little flavor to the leisure pool, to the slide pool. The maintenance issues on it can be a little tough, but we're able to make it work and make it safe for the participants.
And can you expand the pool season and drop the cost?
That would be really tough. I'd have to talk to my director. That's a tough one. It's, again, I'd have to discuss it with my director on that one.
I think one of the things that comes up all the time is about the pool season is that you have staff who is going to school and then you can't just say, okay, school's out on Thursday, pool's open on Friday. It doesn't work like that, because you got to get people who have never worked there before, trained and experienced on that. But it's like, that's what you hear, it's like, oh man, it's 100 degrees, it's June 13th, we want to go to the pool. Well, no, you can't.
Well, I think part of that is our aquatic supervisor does a wonderful job. He does a lot of the lifeguard training classes, I think one in January, and then one during the spring break or the school's spring break. So we always have people ready to go. And then, of course, a lot of them come from the dolphin swim team. So, yes, there's a lot of certified, and, you know, we appreciate them, so.
Suzanne, do you have any questions?
I just wanted to know what's next in terms of implementation and.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I guess what's next is what, are you taking this to council or asking?
I think this is. To my director, because I'd like to move forward with this.
Yeah, so right now, it's a really good question. We're in the process of trying to wrap up our biannual budget effort for the city. So part of the budget effort will already start to include some items that are in this business plan. Not all of them. Some of the strategic items identified in here are things that we still need to continue to explore and cost out, and won't likely happen as part of this current budget cycle, but it's really important for us to have this as a roadmap. We will be sharing this with council in the future. We wanted to get feedback from the commission first and then sharpen our pencils, go through the budget process. Likely as part of the council strategic planning effort, we will raise some of the items in here that really have long-term financial consequences. So leasing equipment is the industry standard, as Paul mentioned, but that creates an ongoing financial commitment that we have to be willing to make, our council has to be willing to make. And so they have to be able to do that in the context of all of the other financial decisions that they need to make. So it really warrants, additional discussion with them. But I think that this business plan helps us to identify areas where we can grow and improve to remain competitive in the city, and to also meet the needs of our community, because as part of the Parks Master Plan effort, which this was a subset of, was identifying what our unmet needs are in the community and how we can work to meet those needs. There are some grant funding opportunities coming up, also funded with Prop 68, that are programmatic in nature. And so I do appreciate the feedback about discounted via rides. Some of those types of items might be eligible for grant funding that we could try as a pilot project. So I think that we always want to make our services accessible, and we've even talked about how we can maximize use of the community center across the street with rec center staff supporting that, so that there might be some opportunity to offer classes, on the northern side of town.
Well, I join my colleagues in congratulating you for the work that you've done, and both historically and prospectively. One thing on the competition with private facilities, as you look at your marketing plan, one of the things that I would really look at as you structure your tiers and look at your marketing and communication strategy, is really, I think it's a great opportunity to create brand loyalty around the West Sacramento brand. If, we live here, and if in the messaging, people understand that supporting our recreation center where we have quality resources is also an expression of an investment in our community and the quality of life in our community, I think it is a compelling aspect of membership and support for the program. So I would really hope that in the marketing strategy, you look at ways to build that brand loyalty and communicate it to the broader public.
Paul, I think you got a really tough job because there's so many, if you're just running a gym, you are the owner of the gym and you make financial decisions that are going to best make your business profitable, make your business sustainable. When you combine that with the different funding strategies and the different needs of a broader community, it's not just a target audience, is you got to make this building work for everybody. And to be able to do that, meet all the community needs, meet a budget need, meet needs of people always trying to take your revenue away from you, if you will, or to give you more revenue, but then that's coming from somewhere else. So whether you're subsidizing memberships or whatever you're doing, it's a tough job. So being able to look at it and say, there's nobody better to be making these decisions than you guys, and then being able to get the community involvement and the feedback from us to say, yeah, you're doing a great job, that's got to count for something to be able to say, yeah, you have the support from us, or from me at least, to continue what you're doing with what you laid out to enhance that service, to provide a better quality of place to go. That's what it is you want to attract and maintain members and provide that community benefit. So finding areas that 10 years later you say, you know what, we're not using this like we were using it, like we thought we would be using it. We're really lucky that you're around, because there isn't that perspective from other places have staff turnover and they say, why did we design this? Why did we put this room back here? Well, we did it because this and that.
Right.
I happen to be slightly involved in the design process of that building and looking at it, and it's like, you guys bought furniture for this project that had a specific need that no one's using. So we don't need to continue using that furniture for that need. We can move that out, put something else in that room, spin bikes, kinesis, the telekinesis room. That would be a community enhancement. But yeah, so you have my support to continue doing this. I think a lot of the other feedback is going to be good for you guys to be able to look at it and say, yeah, we're not trying to compete with the other gyms in town. We're trying to enhance people's ability to get out, move, recreate, be healthy.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, hey, sorry. Got quiet over there, so I didn't hear you.
That's okay. Yeah, thanks, Paul. I'm going to echo what everyone's saying for your work and for your presentation. A couple of things kind of piggybacking off of what Matt said earlier, and then Tracy actually spoke for me what I wanted to ask, which was about using the community center. Being on this side of town, that's come up amongst my neighbors. Kind of like, why can't we have like a yoga class, for instance, at the community center or something, which I don't know if you've had before, but just a thought. One of the things about lowering cost or accessibility to people who have lower income, is there ever a possibility, and I'm thinking of our library, for instance, gives us passes to the exploratorium and museums and other things. Is there ever a way to check out a pass from the library to go to the rec center? It would be a one-time thing maybe, or maybe like a punch card, I don't know, but my family has utilized that service of the libraries to go to places that we normally wouldn't be able to because it's either subsidized or it's free. So I don't know if that's a possibility that you've looked into or ever thought of.
Well, those who have not been at the center, and maybe I'm off a little bit, but we do have day passes, complimentary day passes that we provide to the community members if they're bringing a friend or haven't been there before or haven't been there in months that want to come. We always want them to come in. So it's just a matter of just discussing it or talking to us and asking the front desk, and we can give those things out, so that's not a problem.
That's great. I never knew about that. So it'd be, is there a way to kind of get that information? It's I'm learning this just talking to you, but how would someone generally know that?
Yeah, we don't really advertise that. It's one of those things where we're out in the community at the grocery store and we say, hey, why don't you come to the center? And we carry them in our wallets and our purses and whatnot, and we pass them out, but if you wanted some, we can give you some so you can pass out.
Well, I was just thinking, that's why I was thinking the library, because then someone intentionally, you can advertise it and it's like a one-time thing.
Right.
and you use it and.
And we can do that. We can leave some over at the city hall here and in the Parks and Rec office and in different places, and we can do that.
Okay,
That's not a problem.
That'd be great. And the other thing, and excuse me if I'm ignorant about this, and I shouldn't be, but I know when it first opened in 2009, there was like a big open house and commissioners got to go and stuff. Do you normally do open houses like kind of annually to kind of show off what's there?
Actually, we do that every year. So we just had our 10-year January celebration. And so prior to that, we would either do things such as a celebration or an open house, or we would do kind of a combination program deal where we would pass out cards, and if you attend every class and for the next 3 days, you would get a reward or a free pass or whatnot, things like that. So we try to do that every year. We actually have done that every year in January.
Yeah, I
As an opening, so.
I think January was like pregnant, about to give birth, so I wasn't
Yeah,
paying
it was a
attention.
very exciting 10-year deal. We gave out a lot of prizes and passes, and it's just an opportunity to give back to the community and do some different things.
Paul, I think on that note is, normally the rec center anniversary celebrations have been geared toward the members, and not as well, I don't know, publicized as maybe it could be for enhancing membership or inviting others. So that's something to think about as well for that is more of a community event rather than just a kind of member appreciation. I mean, I haven't been to that in a while, but I know that kind of got the vibe from that it was like, yeah, we're having the 10-year anniversary of the rec center and all the members heard about it, but it didn't really get widely publicized. And that's a challenge with almost every city event or meeting or anything, is how do you get people to know about it without bombarding everybody with everything and sticking a note in everybody's utility bill saying, come to this party. And it's not realistic, but something to think about when you're doing those kind of things. I think to piggyback on that comment was like, there are so many people that you run into that they know that there's a rec center there, but they don't know anything about it or how it works or how much it costs. And it's just like you said, the rumor that, oh yeah, that rec center is great, but it's really expensive. Well, it's not always really expensive. It's relative. So it's just getting that, I don't know, think about it. It's like, that's the other part that I was saying, that you're not running this business as a business, if you were trying to advertise your business, what would you be doing? And that might be a little different, that you're advertising a business that's not a business, if that makes sense at all. So I know it's tough.
Understand. You know, it's one of those things. I'm not. You know, in my opinion, or the views, I think, you know, the price, but the variety of things that you can get at the rec center that promotes health and wellness and education and things like that. It's not just a fitness center. It's a wide range of opportunities there that are outside of that fitness center, but it is part of fitness. And so we look at it as it's comparable to other organizations or even less.
Well, like, you know, you had a couple of meetings ago where you talked about the food classes and or cooking classes and things. No one knows about that. And so it's like figuring out how do we get that out there, that it's not just a place where you go and work out. Or different community events that you're doing at the facility, or the different ways you can have, you know, your birthday parties at the pool. You know, you're constantly hearing about that, where somebody goes, hey, I want to have a birthday party for my kid, where can I go? And it's like the rec center doesn't always come up first, top of mind. But it's a great amenity for it, and we want to get people out there.
And I think that's part of our marketing plan. You know, we're with that social media of just Facebook, and I think constant contact that sends an email out to all of our people that are registered in the system. But I think we need to go further than that. And again, that leads into other budget finances and opportunities that we need to look at in the future. And that's part of our marketing
Totally
plan.
see the flip side of that too, is if this, you know, you guys start spending a bunch of money marketing the recreation center, then the business community comes up and says, why are you guys trying to take away the business from everybody else, which was proven to not actually do that, but still that perception. So, you know, again, let's keep saying, tough job. You got to just keep chugging along.
Thanks.
Anything else from us?
Just a quick comment. I just want to commend all of the staff who worked on this and the consulting firm. That was a big, heavy lift. To get that survey done citywide, to gather all that data, the information, compile it in this, and giving it to us, the great innovative things like Commissioner Hargrove mentioned about maybe adding via for the people from the north side to come out. It's in getting all the high priority things together. I mean, the business plan speaks for itself. You guys really looked hard at what's needed, what needs to get replaced, what needs to happen so we could go on for the next 5-10 years, but also implement new things to happen at the same time and getting these other ideas from the commissioner. So thank you for your presentation.
All right, thanks a lot, Paul.
Thank you.
General Administration, Part 6A, Director's Report.
All right, I have a number of items for you this evening. I'll try to be brief and quick. First is Memorial Park ADA Upgrades Project. I wanted to just let you know that the tree work's been completed. Grading is starting this week. If you haven't been by the site, it'd be great for you to drive by, and it looks very different already. All irrigation lines have been relocated, new lines are being installed, and once the grading is complete, the contractor will start pouring concrete, including all of the ADA ramps, the dugouts, and working on installing the on-street parking. Heritage Oaks Park, we have almost completed the street frontage improvements there, so we now have sidewalks along the park's frontage on Lake Washington Boulevard and Village Parkway, as well as the driveway aprons that will access the parking lot on site. The last portion of work that needs to be done is installing a manhole that will be necessary for future park development, for drainage, and to support the ropes course. And the ropes course project, Clutterwald is working to get their second round of plans submitted this week so that they can begin grading the parking lot, the play area, and the concession kiosk, hopefully by next month. And if all plans are approved this month, they'll also begin working on the installation of the ropes course and the trees. In early September, what they're shooting for right now is a soft opening in January of 2020. The Southport Levee Trailhead Habitat Conservation Fund grant program, Doug Brown alluded to this in his presentation, but we were successful in receiving funding to acquire the Linden Road Southport Levee Trailhead property. A little over a week ago, we were notified that we also received grant funding in the amount of $460,000 to help construct the trailhead improvements. So once we get a little more information on that, we'll be moving forward to actually design the trailhead. What we had included in the presentation tonight were concept level drawings, but we'll need to work on refining what actually is designed for the site and move forward with that project. That's really exciting. It'll be our first formal trailhead facility in the city. We do have Royal and Hensley Park that serves kind of as a trailhead, but I think this site will have some more unique amenities pertaining to the levee improvements and the riverfront. The docks project is moving forward. On July 17th, the City Council approved a contract for $4.5 million with the Dutra Group to begin constructing the dock improvements at Riverwalk Park. So the project will be under construction. It'll start in late September, and it'll take several months to complete. I'm looking at Aaron because I don't know exactly how many months it's going to take to complete, but.
It'll wrap up by mid-March.
Okay, thank you. And then I also wanted to let you know that on July 15th, Aaron Rivas, on behalf of the city, submitted an application to the Milken Institute Center for the Future of Aging for the 2019 Innovation Award. I'd like to thank Commissioner Reed for giving us the opportunity to explore that grant program. The award recognizes cities in California who are preparing their communities for the growth of their older adult population and embracing innovation opportunities. So we were not selected to receive the award, but they were really interested in what West Sacramento is doing and invited us to come and highlight some of our programs at a future conference. And then upcoming events, I just want to highlight that we have a great partnership with West Sac Play, who hosts events to raise funds for park improvements, specifically shade structures at our park sites. And I didn't have this in my notes, but I did just want to mention that Summerfield and Westfield parks now have completed shade structures over the play areas, thanks in part to West Sac Play. So West Sac Play has an event coming up on August 24th at Bridgeway Lakes Park. It's their Farm to Park event. They may be sold out, but if you're interested, you can go onto their website to see if there's any seats available. And then lastly, I want to highlight that we have 2 different entities offering free yoga in our parks on the weekends. The Yoga Seed Collective offers yoga at the Mill Street Pier on Sunday mornings. And Yoga Moves Us offers free yoga at Bridgeway Lake Parks now on Saturday mornings. So that concludes my update.
Thank you. Matt?
Just as part of the director's update, I don't think we've had a meeting since we did the Parks tour. And I want to thank the Parks and Recreation staff for putting that together. And some of us went on that tour. It was awesome. We hit 25 different sites in every single neighborhood, basically, in the city of West Sacramento. It was very interesting. It's probably the 5th time I've been on an organized tour of the parks in West Sacramento, and every time I learned something new. Getting out there and actually seeing our facilities is really helpful, especially those that are outside of the neighborhoods that I travel in a lot. And seeing the variation of the different neighborhoods and the parks that are out there, and the care with which the city and the staff really tries to make sure that the amenities are taken care of and looked after and thought through is really nice. So I just want to thank the director and the staff for putting that together, and it was very fun, except for Sam Cooney's corny joke. The day was awesome. I love Sam. Thank you very much.
All right, item 6B, future item requests within the scope of the commission. Are there any agenda item requests? Danny? Yeah, for future.
I just wanted to bring up, today is National Night Out, and we're sitting here while the community is out in National Night Out, and I want to propose maybe next year we could talk about the calendar and join the community on this day. Thanks.
Also encourages community participation here if we're not have a competing community event. I know we've talked about that for different things like election days and things like that. So it's just having that consideration for the calendar, I think, would be great. Any other future item requests for agendas?
I was just going to get, this is a past request, but wondering when we would be granted a aging plan update?
I have reached out to city staff to see if they can work on preparing one, so I think that we'll see what we can do about the next meeting, or it might be the meeting after that, just based on their availability, but we're working on it.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I guess, I don't know if this is within the, I guess this is within the scope of the commission. I always have wondered about sandboxes and kiosks in parks, and I just wanted to know if West Sac has kind of like had, as I noticed, we don't really have kiosks or sandboxes, and I was just wanting to know, like, maybe you could just answer it right now, but kind of like if we've, in the past, have looked into that, and it's something that just isn't suitable or whatever, but just wondering to know kind of like why there is a deficit, and that's all.
Well, sandboxes have been kind of a maintenance challenge, and so you see that all over the state, nationally. You don't see a lot of new sandboxes anymore, just because it's hard to keep them clean and to keep them safe for the children playing them, and it requires a very high level of maintenance to go through every morning and make sure there isn't anything dangerous or unsanitary in the sandboxes. So that's just been a trend. In terms of kiosks, we actually are considering kiosks in some of our new park features, where there are sites that have important information or educational opportunities. Many of our parks are smaller parks, and they just haven't been incorporated. But I think now with with technology, there's a lot of opportunity to educate people about programs that we have citywide with little scan codes. There are certainly opportunities that we've considered at Heritage Oaks Park for having our high school students, our career pathway students as part of the West Sac Home Run, even be part of programming, updated information that can be incorporated. So it's something that we are thinking about. It's something we're certainly going to add into our trailhead, our trailhead sites. Our first one will be the one at Linden Road and the Southport Levee, and we plan to use that as an opportunity to educate trail users about the conditions on the river, any levee improvement work that might be taking place that people need to know about, areas that might be seasonally off limits, and then, just general information about the trail system and other recreation opportunities. So it's something we're definitely working to incorporate more into our facilities.
That's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that, especially there's so much going on in the city all the time. And I noticed on in the report about the rec center, that's like, I think 34% on average still get their information from like leaflets and flyers. So it's good to know that it's out there. One thing I just thought of, and in the process of making these improving West Acre and then Fallbrook, I've been approached by people that I've talked to throughout my kids' school communities and stuff. There was some tragic deaths in Sacramento in 2017 of 5 different children. Have we ever thought about incorporating any kind of memorial to those kids that passed away in a park, just to kind of commemorate them, whether it be a little garden, a pollinator garden or something? Has that ever been talked about in the parks concepts?
We have not, but we have a memorial policy that was actually approved within the last 2 years. So it's something that a member of the community or an organization could certainly propose.
Okay, thank you.
Any other future agenda item requests or comments or questions? No? All right, so we just need a motion to adjourn, and we can...
I move.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Reed, seconded by Commissioner Eckler. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, meeting's adjourned. Thank you.